George, the voice of the sea. The calling of a restless heart. Since childhood, George had always dreamed of the sea. He would often tell his mother, "Mom, one day I'll sail a great ship. I'll stand at the bow during sunset and reach the ends of the world." But in their modest life in New Jersey, most people laughed at dreams like his. His father was an alcoholic, and his mother was chronically ill. By age 10, George was already working small jobs to support his family. Leaving fear as a companion. At 19, George spent one night wide awake, his heart filled with questions and an emptiness he couldn't explain. The next morning, he packed a small suitcase and headed straight to the port of New York. He approached one of the largest shipping companies and said to the staff, "I don't have experience, but I'm a hard worker. Just give me a chance." Most people laughed, but the captain of the Blue Horizon, Donald Evans, looked into his eyes and replied, "We'll try you for a month. If your work proves worthy, you'll stay." That was the beginning of George's life at sea. Discipline and destiny. The first days were hard. George scrubbed decks, cleaned cabins, carried crates, and followed every order without complaint. Some crewmates mocked him, calling him the land boy. Then came the storm. Violent waves slammed the ship. Amid the chaos, the captain's first mate fell overboard. While others panicked or froze, George grabbed a rope, dove into the freezing waters, and pulled the man to safety. After that day, no one mocked him again. Hope and home. 3 years passed. George had traveled to over a dozen countries, climbed the ranks, and become the captain's right hand. But his heart never forgot one thing. How is my mother doing? In December 2024, when the ship docked back in New York, George went straight to his childhood home. But a new family lived there. The man who answered the door said George's mother had passed away the year before from cancer. George stood silently for a long time. In the yard, the tiny wind chime he gave his mother as a boy still hung on the sea calls its son. After that, George kept sailing, visiting places he had never imagined. On one voyage to Asia, he learned of a massive storm ahead. Instead of turning back, he made a daring decision: reroute the ship to help evacuate a stranded community. On board were mothers, elderly passengers, and frightened workers. George's leadership and calm saved every single life. This act made headlines around the world. CNN and BBC called him the sea's silent hero, Captain George. Now 38 years old, George is no longer a novice. He's respected in every port. Before each voyage, he climbs to the ship's highest deck, looks out at the sea, and whispers, "Mom, I heard the voice of the sea. It was the voice you once believed in." The cruel streets, the storms, the lonely nights, none of it broke him. Because George was not shaped by ease, but by courage. He became the man who didn't wait for rescue. He became the rescuer. George, the voice of the sea, a message from the deep. It had been 5 years since George earned the title of captain. He had survived typhoons, led rescue missions, trained new sailors, and spoken at international maritime conferences. Yet one thing still haunted him: regret. The regret of never saying goodbye to his mother. On a chilly October evening, the Blue Horizon 2, now a modern vessel under George's command, received an unusual distress signal. It was old, faint, and in Morse code, a language rarely used in modern times. The message read, "George, home is not gone. Come find it." The crew assumed it was interference or an old transmission echoing through the ocean's magnetic layers. But George, he froze. His mother used to teach him Morse code when he was a child. He remembered clearly that specific sequence of words was. He didn't sleep that night. At 3:47 a.m., George adjusted the ship's course toward a small, forgotten island in the North Atlantic that didn't even have an official name. It had appeared on old naval maps as Anchor's Whisper. The Island of Answers. When they reached the island, it was overgrown and quiet, untouched by civilization. George and a few crew members took a boat to shore. They explored for hours until they found something that made his heart stop. A single wooden bench facing the sea, carved with the words, "To George, my brave sailor." Beneath the bench, buried and protected in a small metal chest, was a sealed envelope. Inside, a handwritten letter in his mother's familiar script. "My dear George, if you are reading this, you found your way through every storm. I always knew you would. I left this place when I knew I wouldn't have much time left. I didn't want my last memory to be you crying over me. I wanted it to be you sailing into your future. You are my greatest voyage." George collapsed to his knees. The ocean breeze blew stronger, as if echoing her words. Part 9. Returning. Not as a son, but as a legend. After that discovery, something changed in George. He returned to the sea, but this time not to prove himself. He had nothing left to prove. He began mentoring young sailors, especially orphans and children from troubled homes, offering them not just training but family. He started a maritime academy on a donated ship, calling it the Horizon Home. It became one of the most respected training programs in the world. People said he became the sailor whose heart was bigger than the ocean. One day, while giving a speech at the UN Climate Summit on ocean conservation, a reporter asked, "Captain George, what keeps you sailing?" George smiled, looked into the camera, and said, "Some people search for treasures in the sea. I found mine in the storm, in a message, and in the memory of a mother who believed I could sail past the horizon."